Hello and welcome to our virtual conference on virtual reality. Always wanted to say that. This is Winston Baker's 4th annual Immersive Summit in partnership with Marché du Film at Cannes XR. Normally, we would host this in May during the Cannes Film Festival along the Croisette. And although we're not on the French Riviera sipping on rosé this year, we are truly grateful that you've taken the time to join us here online. We also truly appreciate our speakers and the support of Marché du Film and Aching Gump. In case you're not familiar with us, I'm Catherine Winston, and this is Amy Baker.
Hi.
And we are the founders of Winston Baker. We've been specializing in producing conferences for the entertainment industry for over a decade. We also started hosting webinars earlier this year to keep our community inspired, engaged, and informed as we all go through these unprecedented times together. With that in mind, we'd love to know who's in the audience. So let us know who you are, what you do, and where you're from on the side comments. And please do keep all comments and questions professional. Finally, we will host Q&A at the end of each discussion. So if you think of any questions along the way, just click on the Q&A button and type in your inquiries or upvote others. Amy, go ahead and introduce our special guests.
I am very excited to start off our first virtual immersive summit with such a talented and respected industry trailblazer. Please welcome our keynote speaker, Roger Ross Williams. Hi, Roger.
Hi. Great to be here. I don't have rosé, but I have iced tea.
I was thinking about bringing a rosé to this, and I thought, well, it's still quite early. So
a little early, but you know, in COVID times, you can have rosé whenever.
Absolutely. So I'm going to let everyone know a little bit about you, Roger. Roger's an Academy Award-winning director, producer, and writer, and the first African-American director to win an Academy Award with his film, Music by Prudence. Roger directed Life Animated, which won him the Sundance Directing Award, was nominated for an Academy Award in 2016, and won 3 Emmys in 2018. He also directed the VR documentary, Traveling While Black, which is pretty amazing. You definitely a must-see. This was one of the most significant VR works at the Sundance Film Festival in 2019. His production company, One Story Up, is currently in production on several projects and recently produced 3 episodes of the critically acclaimed Netflix limited series, The Innocence Files, which Roger also directed. He is currently directing a new documentary feature and his first scripted feature for Amazon Studios. Moderating this keynote conversation with Roger is Rebecca Sun, a dear friend and award-winning journalist who most recently was a senior reporter at The Hollywood Reporter, where she covered the business of entertainment and wrote about inclusion and representation in media. Last year, Gold House named Rebecca the A100 list of the most impactful Asians in culture, which is really impressive. Rebecca and Roger, the virtual stage is all yours.
Great.
Thank you so much, Amy. Roger, thank you so much for making the time to speak with us today. Really excited to kind of dig into your experience. So let me jump right in. You know, this conference is called Immersive Live, and you have an extensive background in traditional filmmaking. So I'm curious about what about this project, Traveling While Black, made you decide that it would be best served using the VR format?
Yeah. Well, you know, this project has a long history, and I was approached by Bonnie Nelson Schwartz, who's the executive producer of the project, and she had done a play in DC about the Green Book.
Not to be confused with that movie.
Not to be confused with the Hollywood movie, The Green Book, which isn't really about the Green Book at all. This is an actual play about the actual real Green Book that she put on, and she wanted to do a documentary. She came to me and said, let's do a documentary about the Green Book. And I said, and this was 7-8 years ago, and I said, you know, there's this kind of thing called new media, and I think it was called transmedia at the time. And
not to be confused with transgender, the term.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. And I just mentioned it to Kara Mertes, who was at Sundance at the time running the documentary films program, and she said, we have a new lab called the New Frontier lab at Sundance. And so I did the lab with it, and it was this sort of, web-based project. And then it's sort of, we were developing it for a few years. And then Shari Freelo from Sundance, who runs New Frontier, said, you should think about this for VR. And I hadn't really thought about VR. I knew about VR, but I was sort of immersed in my 2D world, right? And they gave me a grant. Sundance gave me a grant to sort of study VR. It was a Sundance, New York Times, MacArthur immersive storytelling grant. And that allowed me to really explore VR. So I got to just see a lot of work. I got to talk to a lot of VR production studios, and then I saw the People's House with that Felix and Paul Studios, who I partnered with, did, and it was about Barack Obama and Michelle Obama and them giving a tour of the White House, and it was the only kind of thing that I saw that was really, really realistic, that really struck me, that could be applied, that their sort of technology, which is a proprietary, their camera, that could be applied to a documentary type format. And because it was just so real, like you were really with them in the White House. And then, we began the long journey with Oculus to figure out how we were going to tell this story. And there were many iterations from, at one point it was going to be CGI. At one point it was a scripted thing. And I basically explored all this stuff, but came back around to my documentary storytelling instincts, and to use them to apply them to this sort of new, exciting, new sort of thing that I didn't know anything about. So it was really exciting, and it was a kind of a big circular journey.
Yeah, and for those who haven't yet had a chance to watch Traveling While Black, even if you don't have a VR device, you can watch it on YouTube and on the New York Times website, where it's got that cool thing where if you can move your device or move your mouse around and really see the 360-degree image that's captured. In your transition from, or into VR filmmaking as a first-time virtual reality filmmaker, what were some of the trickiest lessons that you found like you had to learn or overcome?
Ooh, well, in the beginning, I was told, you've got to unlearn everything and you've got to think of it as theater. You've got to think sort of in that. So, of course, what I did is I hired a theater screenwriter, and we kind of wrote kind of like a screenplay, and that just didn't work with what I was trying to do. So that was sort of understanding the sort of the world I was inhabiting, and how to think about it in a different way. Took me a while, and I think what was most exciting to me was that I had the opportunity to, like, if you're sitting in a movie theater, you're looking at your cell phone, you're eating your popcorn, you're like not, there's so many distractions. And when I would show a film, I always watch the people watching the film. With VR, what was exciting to me was that you can't turn away from it. So you can't eat your popcorn, you can't look at your cell phone, you can't do anything except be immersed in experience. And that helped me to really think about it like that it's completely everywhere, and to think about how to tell a story, and that the story is on the walls and on the floor and on the ceiling and everywhere around you, and how to do that in a way that's layered, and that it keeps you engaged, and then think about the interactive elements of the story, and how do you take it to another level by something you do in your experience. So that was all just exciting to explore, but it was also completely challenging for me to begin to think like that. And it was also challenging for me because I couldn't do a traditional interview where I can edit, what someone says. I can kind of get them to say, edit together the kind of idea that I wanted to express in the piece. I had to, the camera is there, and what they're saying is kind of what they're saying. So that was also a bit of a challenge.
It's interesting because I think that I used to, as somebody who didn't have a huge background in VR films or a lot of experience, we're used to thinking, okay, virtual reality is best for those like giant nature documentaries where you're swooping through, over the Grand Canyon or something like that. But Traveling While Black made me realize that one feature of a story that could be really well suited to this format is something that's very location based, very specific, like the People's House, where you're talking about the White House. And in this case, about the diner,
Yeah.
And so about Ben's Chili Bowl. And so because you are just there, you're listening to, Tamir Rice's mother speak. And so first, and then also what you do is, there's times when the diner is closed and you're projecting these, images, this black and white footage of various documents of how African Americans have been treated, right? Like when they travel in the South. And so talk a little bit about just, first of all, just about Traveling While Black for those who haven't had a chance to see it yet, kind of give them a little teaser of what do they expect when they watch it?
Yeah. Well, Traveling While Black is about the Green Book, and the Green Book was the guidebook that African Americans used to travel in the 50s and 60s before the passage of the Civil Rights Act, when Black people couldn't really travel freely, even though we were free. They couldn't travel freely, so they couldn't get gas at gas stations. They couldn't stay in hotels. Hotels didn't allow African Americans. Restaurants didn't allow African Americans. So you had to kind of really plan if you were going to take a trip from point A to point B, and you had to, go to the bathroom on the side of the road or bring something. I mean, it was really a challenge. So there's also dangerous. There was all kinds of danger lurking, and it wasn't just in the South. It was in the North. There were also sundown towns. So if you were African American, you couldn't travel after dark in certain towns, and the more sundown towns were in the North than were in the South even. And so it really, you enter in Traveling While Black, you enter a location of the Green Book. And what I discovered in making this is that the locations in the Green Book became these sort of safe spaces. They were places you can stay, places you can sleep, places you can eat, and they became these safe spaces, but they also became places of community and convening for Black people. So when we started thinking about it, we thought Ben's Chili Bowl is an iconic location. It was the first silent movie theater, Black silent movie theater in DC. It was a pool hall, and that was the location of the Green Book. It was a pool hall and Ben's Chili Bowl, and it was the first place that President Barack Obama went after he took the inauguration for office. It is an iconic place. They have their own in-house historian. They have the storytelling. And what really got me thinking is because they have this storytelling on Wednesday nights, the historian comes and the people from the community come and they tell stories in the African-American tradition. So I thought, if we base it in this place, in this sort of sacred space, this sort of safe space for Black people, we can bring the audience into a conversation of the dangers. And for me, it was also really important to connect the past to the present, that to show how much has really not changed since, they were traveling. We begin with the 100-year-old woman who was a ballerina who traveled to all the way through to civil rights workers to, all the way to today, to Samaria Rice and the tragedy of her son being murdered by the police.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very symbolic because that you said it there, because like you said, it's a gathering spot, for the stories and the experiences of Black people in America to be passed down. And so it's like, I mean, you were virtually at Ben's Chili Bowl, you know, as if you were really sitting at the counter, hearing these stories. You know, to broaden it out, I'm curious about, you know, now that you've had this experience, how do you think that, you know, using these sorts of immersive technologies, why is it such an effective vehicle for telling stories that are specifically about trying to relate the experiences of others, the experiences of a specific group of people to an audience that may not share that background? Why is immersive technology so powerful for that?
Yeah, well, I think if you're not an African American and you experience traveling while Black, you get invited into a Black space that you normally wouldn't be privy to. You get invited into a conversation that, you know, we as African Americans have with each other all the time, but you become sort of part of that conversation and part of that experience. And I think that is something that, you know, you can only kind of do in this sort of in VR, to sit there in a booth with Black people and hear their stories and feel their pain and be immersed in it. And the other thing is, you know, I've been thinking about, like, you know, what some of the more sort of powerful parts of the piece. And for me, you know, there's a moment where we project this sort of cell phone footage on the floor and the walls, and you're surrounded by it. And if you think about it, we have all seen so much, you know, on social media, so much footage of Black bodies being, you know, shot down and killed by the police, and we just kind of, you know, click the angry emoji and move on. But in a VR experience, you're surrounded. You have the opportunity to surround someone by it, so that they can't turn away from it, and they can't turn away from the pain, because when you're looking at it on, you know, just on your computer on Facebook or whatever, you can just move on your timeline, and but you can't turn away from that pain. So people come out of the experience. It was mind-blowing to me when we premiered at Sundance to watch the reaction of people, both white and Black, and the experiences were different, because if you were a white person, they came out of it and they would just cry. People would be crying in my arms, and they would be like, I just never understood historically, you know, and historically that connection. I always thought it was like, you know, in the South, or this was, you know, that connection to the president, how much hasn't changed. So it's almost as an educational tool. So, and then if you're African American, you come out of it and you're, you know, you've lived with this trauma, you've lived with this pain, and it sort of brings it to the surface in a way that is very, 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 very profound. And the first time I watched the fully rendered piece, I think I don't know, I cried like a baby. I was so, we suppress all of this sort of trauma and pain, and it sort of brings it to the surface and hopefully allows for a conversation around sort of, you know, healing and solution.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was so unexpected while watching Traveling While Black, which for the most part is situated during that sort of Jim Crow time, you know, the mid 20th century, to suddenly find yourself listening to Samaria Rice, you know, talk about her son, who, and I should say today is Tamir Rice's 18th birthday. He should be an 18-year-old man.
Oh my God, today is 18th.
Today is supposed to be his 18th birthday. He should have been allowed to vote in this election, you know.
Oh.
So, but to bring that, you know, the choice to sort of make that connection, you know, between those two things. And then in light of, even in just this past month, as you alluded to, you know, we have seen George Floyd die. We have heard or read the transcripts of Elijah McClain's last words. How do you think that sorry, it's so powerful. I've been sort of losing my words here. How do you think that this medium can further be used to make that point, to sort of help people sort of really understand viscerally what this is about?
Yeah. Well, I think that it's such a powerful medium, and because you are so deeply immersed in the experience, that hopefully you can get beyond just empathy, and you can, and you know, I've been reading the book, which is #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, called How to Be an Anti-Racist. And
Abraham X. Kendi.
Yes. And you can go, you can be an anti-racist. You can want to come out of there and you can be like, okay, I'm going to be an anti-racist. I'm going to do something. I'm going to actually fight systematic racism in this country, as opposed to just, you know, being like, oh, that's so sad. You know, it can immerse you so much that you are moved to action. And I've seen it a lot as we've rolled out Traveling While Black over the last couple of years all across the country. You know, from the CEO of Walmart in tears saying he wants to take it to the leadership of Walmart so that they can understand, to, you know, to sort of common people, someone in a community center, a family. I saw, there was one point where I saw a couple sitting across from each other because there's the booth. We build a set, the booth, and you sit in the actual booth where you're experiencing it. A couple sitting with their headsets, holding hands across the table, watching it. And I was just so moved by that image and that sort of connection. And so people all come out of it and they're like, what can we do? What can we, you know, how can we, you know, sort of make a difference, you know, instead of just sort of, you know, oh, that's just really sad. That they're moved to action.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you interested in further sort of exploring this medium and making more films in VR? But even if not, I can imagine that you can move back and forth. I'm curious about what subjects or what angles are interesting to you now, particularly since, again, things are moving so quickly in terms of the public understanding or grappling of this experience of how, you know.
Yeah. I've been thinking about that, and I think I like using, what's appealing to me is using VR as a tool to educate and inform. And I've also been reading Stamped from the Beginning, which is Eben's other book, which is about
Kendi book.
The other Kendi book. I'm a big Kendi fan lately. I mean, everyone is. I think that's #6 on the New York Times bestseller list. So he has the #1 and #6. And that is the history of how we got here. And I've been really sort of fascinated to go to sort of really explore and educate people on how we got to this point in America, a reckoning on race. And I hope it lasts. I hope it's not fleeting. But I really, I think VR would be an amazing tool because how do you take someone back to the founding of America? To Stamped from the Beginning is based on Jefferson Davis, who in 1860 stood on the floor of the Senate. He was from Arkansas, I believe. And he stood on the floor of the Senate and he said, you know, Black people are, and he didn't say Black people, he said, I don't know, Negroes are inferior to the white race, and they are stamped from the beginning with an inferiority. And this concept and sort of exploring, and in the book, you go back to the beginning of this concept to King James and the Portuguese, and sort of like, so it'd be interesting to explore the origins of race and racism, and you can do that like amazingly in VR and be immersed in these worlds. I was talking to someone yesterday who was saying that wouldn't it be interesting to experience, and I don't know, experience like a slave ship and what that journey, that middle passage was like. You know, I just did a series about slavery for a major streamer, and we explored, you know, we went to Benin, West Africa, the beginning of the slave trade, and it's about sort of the exploration of sort of, you know, sort of slavery in America, but through food. It's a food show, but being in Benin in West Africa, hearing the horrors and the stories of the brutality, you know, and you don't want to re-traumatize people. So for me, I want to sort of, it's sort of that line between like educating. It's about educating people, because I learned things that I had no idea about that journey, and even before that journey began, of the mass graves that they threw people in alive because they were too weak to make the middle passage. And we stood on the mass graves in Benin, and we just, I mean, the tears in this monument, I'm gonna start crying now just thinking about it. And you know, they would march them down a road, they'd put them in a holding pen for 2 weeks in the dark to acclimate them to being in the hull of the ship for 2 weeks. And if you got sick, or if you were too weak, they just throw you alive into a mass grave. And so they built this monument on top of the mass grave right at the gate of no return. And it's just so powerful. And like, so educating people on the horrors and of what, you know, sort of dividing people by race and by color, what that did to humanity is, like, to me, is really, really fascinating, and could be sort of, you know, I think in VR would just be mind-blowing.
And the fact that that's the root, the origin of our country, like
that's,
you know,
the origin. The country is built on that.
Foundation. That's the foundation.
The foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see that, and I see what you're saying in terms of that tricky balance. I mean, that's sort of the discussion we have about, you know, the ethics of sharing all this footage of police brutality. You know, not wanting to re-traumatize Black Americans who already live it and already know it, but on the other hand, needing non-Black people to really understand and sort of viscerally, and not just in an intellectual way. But yeah, no, you're right. I mean,
it's why I made Traveling While Black a conversation as opposed to someone, you know, originally it was going to be, you know, before I kind of, you know, had figured out exactly what we were going to do, it was going to be, you were going to kind of be on this journey of a Black person traveling. But then there's something, but then when you have, like, you're pulled over and a gun is held to your head and all that, to me, that's re-traumatized. That doesn't really work in VR too, because you're like, well, that's not really in my head. But it's much more emotional to sit there and to hear people tell their stories, and to use your imagination more, and to feel the emotion and the pain and trauma, as opposed to, like, you know, literally having like a gun held to your head.
That's a great point. That was something I was wondering and thinking about. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I was thinking, like, oh, you know, what if you did a first person of, you know, like behind the dash? But then you're right. It's incredibly triggering and re-traumatizing. And to be able to look into the eyes of a mother who lost her son, I think is something that should be a universally relatable
yes. Experience. No one can deny that no one can deny her pain. And with Samaria, you know, she'd been a, you know, sort of the media swirling around her, but no one had ever sort of really looked into her eyes and asked her to talk about that moment where she couldn't touch her son's body because they said it was a crime scene. You know, she's like, she never really talked about this. And, you know, I mean, we were all, everyone on set, we were all in tears. You know, we're back in the video village, and we were like, me and Felix and Paul and like the entire crew, we were like on the floor crying. It was really emotional shoot, and I think that I feel like, wow, that only in VR, and you know, and also the technology that they use, their proprietary camera just captures it in such a realistic, sort of powerful way.
Yeah, you feel like you're sitting at the table with her, you know, and that's another, again, where we're talking about powerful communal experiences. The act of sitting at a table across from somebody is the traditional way in which we bond and come to establish relationships with one another.
Exactly. You know, so you know, it's something so familiar. We go out, we have a meal, we sit with our family around a table. We always think about how much of our lives are around a table, just talking to other people, to your family, to your friends, to your partner. It's often around a table and around food. And so it was kind of you know, just a sort of a natural way to have this conversation.
It was nice to kind of also see, you know, different ages and also Black and white people sitting at the counter, listening to her tell, you know, listening to Samaria tell her story. I think it was sort of a glimmer of hope as to what we need to do in order to prevent this cycle from perpetuating over and over again. Is you need a diverse array of people to listen. Right.
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed, but everyone is moving about the restaurant for all the other conversations. It's a busy, active restaurant. People are taking out orders and they're calling out orders, and it's all fun. But when Samaria starts to speak, everyone stops and turns to her, and that of course is very intentional. And just to listen to her, to sort of embrace her with the community and the love, and that just made it so much more powerful, so much more intense.
Yeah, and it felt very intimate too, again, because of, I think, the layout of the restaurant, where, and you could see, I was panning and looking at the listeners, and I could see a woman reaching for tissues, and I could see, you could see the impact people were having, which was,
yeah, because it was real. We were documenting a moment, and those people were having that real reaction. They weren't actors; they were people from the community.
Wow. Yeah. Well, it is a beautiful piece and an important one. And I guess before I kick it to Amy, I just want to encourage people. You know, Catherine put the link in the comments. You can also search on YouTube for Traveling While Black. I highly recommend everybody to give it a watch.
Okay, I too have tissues ready, and during this, Catherine and I were communicating, and we're like, oh my gosh, and you know, about today would have been his birthday, and then all of this stuff. Yeah. So
I feel like I need to. I'm gonna call Samaria as soon as we get off, because thank you for reminding me of that.
Just so many things. So I do want to get into the questions, because I know a lot of people, you know, we're engaged, and it also will let me catch myself and, you know, get rid of this lump in my throat. So let's start with Eda Vaughn has said, Roger, what were the challenges you had to overcome in preparing a VR shoot? And I know that you talked about some of them, and about how you started one way with the theatrical, you went to someone in theater, and then you ended up writing a script, but I think she would like some more specifics about the challenges you had to overcome preparing for this VR shoot.
Yeah, this VR shoot was 4 days, long days from 6 in the morning until 4 a.m. the next day. And it's more, you know, for this shoot particularly, you got to kind of think of it more of like a film shoot. We have a crew of 80 people. We transformed the restaurant into Ben's Chili Bowl from the 1950s. We had to, you know, dress the whole restaurant, the signage, remove all the modern things, put, you know, have the little jukeboxes on the table and all that stuff. People had to have costume changes because we would go back and forth from the present to the past. So the interactive element, if you watch it on Oculus, is you could look into the mirror and everyone is same people sitting there are you're back in the early 60s. And so we had to shoot it in different costume changes. We had to, you know, I wasn't even prepared for how extensive the shoot was. Felix and Paul Studios are masters at this. They are the premier sort of, I feel like, VR production company for doing this sort of real like with real people. And it was, you know, we had a whole staging area. We had to shut down the street. We had to we had the fire department on hand because we had this sort of, you know, like this sort of, it was mimicking the riots, the early riots in the 60s. And we had, it was a very, very, very extensive shooting. If you see in the beginning of the piece where there's a jib shot, a tracking shot outside of the restaurant at night with a car from the 50s. So in order to do that, we have to shut down the street. We have to remove all the modern cars. We have to, you know, get a vintage car and have it sit there. We have to wet down the street so it has that glistening, you know, like it was quite the shoot, and prepared me for my upcoming scripted feature.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, we have a question here from Panos Cioglu. And I'm sorry if I've just really meant, I don't know what I've done to your name, but I hope I got it right. Okay, so Roger, thank you very much for the interesting discussion. Do you consider VR a proper new medium, an evolution of a pre-existing one, or a mixture of different media? Thank you again.
Ooh, that's a good question. I feel like it's a new medium. I think it's in its infancy. It's evolving rapidly. Already, probably from when we shot Traveling While Black to now, the technology it's just changing so fast that as soon as you do something, there's a better camera or other possibilities that which is what's really exciting about it, is because it's ever changing, ever evolving, growing, and going sort of at sort of a rapid speed. So I guess it was like, you know, the beginning of, you know, the movies, when, you know, we went from silent movies to color to, you know, this is where we are. This is like, and it's exciting.
I agree. And then it will be interesting too, after you go off and do all these features and television, whatever, if you come back again and do VR once again, and then to see how that looks and works out, you know. It may be something totally different and totally
well, Inaratu did a VR piece, and I know you guys probably know it, about the crossing the border from Mexico to America and that journey. And I believe, I mean, I don't know if this is completely accurate, but I believe that VR piece was like $40 million. And only the way like a, you know, multi-Oscar winning director like could do, and premiered in Cannes, and I've experienced it. It's in an airplane hangar. It's incredible. And to work at that level, to create an experience at that level, that would be my dream, is to do something on that scale.
So we'll come back to you in a few years when you're talking about that project. So we have a last question here from George Russell. Well, we have more questions, but here's a question from George Russell. Aloha. I've shot travel in some sports events here in VR, but now have a chance portraying past iconic local figures come alive at a historical museum site? How would one determine which medium, VR, OR, AR, should be employed? I think that you have to determine this early on. Thank you.
Well, I can only speak to VR because, and I can just say that it's a very rewarding process, and that he should definitely explore if these are his famous, I think he said sports figures, or
well, historical iconic
historical iconic local figures. Well, I mean, you know, one of the things that one of the codes that we cracked, and this is something that I was really intent on sort of figuring out, is how to use archival in VR. And what we did in Traveling While Black is we took archival footage and we just projected it on all the walls, which was technically very, very difficult, because we had to, you know, we had to sort of make sure that we had to sort of project this sort of blue light and add it in post. So we had to sort of shoot it at night, and we had to sort of kind of make it a giant the room into a giant green screen, and then project. It was very complicated, but it was very effective. And you are immersed in the archival and then the history, as opposed to, you know, seeing it in a sort of flat 2D way. And I think that works really well in VR.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so Shalak Farrell says, thank you for your fascinating talk. I want to congratulate you on your achievement. How long did it take you to make the piece from concept to distribution?
Well, the project of Traveling While Black, which is the concept started about maybe 8 years ago, but the VR part of it was it was probably a couple years from, you know, sort of like when I sort of committed to understanding and making and creating a VR piece, till we actually premiered it at the New Frontier at Sundance Film Festival. It was quite a long journey, you know, and that's it doesn't have to take that long, and because that's kind of how long it takes to create a documentary film. I always say it takes 2 years, like kind of a year of shooting and a year of editing, so more or less. But this was also quite expensive, because the post process in VR and in this piece, you know, was 7 months, you know, and that's, you know, so you have to account for that, and then sort of conceptualizing it and figuring it out, and between getting, you know, funding and, you know, working with all the various partners of Oculus and the New York Times and, you know, and Sundance, and doing the labs and going through, it was quite the journey. So I would say it did take a couple years.
Oh, I guess so. And I know we only have you for a few more minutes, so there's multiple questions. So I'll just try to ask one. We didn't talk about financing yet. So Suzanne Guggenberger says, Roger, thank you for all the insights. Could you please tell us a bit about the financing process? How high was the budget considering only the shoot? And who invested in the project?
Well, I don't think Oculus will let me talk about the actual budget, but I can say that the financing began with a grant from Sundance New Frontier. So that began the journey. Shortly after that, Oculus, I was able to sort of create a proof of concept and sort of, you know, pitch the piece to Oculus, who came on and funded the entire project. But it began with an artist grant, and there are lots of artist grants out there for VR, and I encourage them to apply to artist grants, so they can, you know, it's not going to be enough to make your project, but it can start you on your journey, and you can formulate the ideas and the story you want to tell, and then go to the big guys, to the big funders, and get the money.
Yes, absolutely. And I actually just have been receiving multiple emails about a grant that Kaleidoscope is doing, and they're partners with the Marché du Film Can XR experience. So
Yes, yes, yeah,
Kaleidoscope, I'm getting a lot of emails from them. So,
yes, yes, yes.
okay, well, I'm sorry we can't answer all the questions because you have a busy schedule and you're off to do other master classes and whatnot, you know, the bell.
Yeah, never ending.
But I want to thank you so much. Thank you, Rebecca and Roger, for everything. The audience has been totally engaged and very interactive, and so we really appreciate the time that you spent with us.
Yes, thank you,
Thank
Rebecca.
you. Thank you, Roger. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca.
Bye-bye.
And we're just going to take a brief break and wait for our next panel to come online.
Okay.
Looks like our panelists are starting to come online now. Hi, Tom. Hi, Gina. Hi, Chase.
Hi there.
How's it going?
It's going great.
It's going well.
Happy to be here.
Good.
Likewise.
Let me see. Let me unmute Gina here.
Hi, can you hear me?
There we are. We can hear you now.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. Thanks so much for coming on to join us for Immersive Live. We're just waiting on a couple more panelists. In the meantime, to our attendees, just as a reminder, after our panel discussion today, we will have a short informal happy hour since it is going to be 7:30 in Cannes. So for anybody who's in the mood for a rosé just so we can celebrate, you know, Cannes in spirit, we will invite you to do so after this panel discussion. And of course, panelists, you are more than welcome to stick around for the networking. Closing.
I'm ready for happy hour.
Who cares if it's only 9:30 on the West Coast?
Yeah.
Is it Friday yet? Let's see here. We're just waiting on Eunice, and I think Paula is joining now.
Hi, everybody. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Paula. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Excited to be here. How are you?
Great. We're almost getting started. We're just waiting for Eunice and Nonny to come online, and we'll start shortly.
Great.
In the meantime, while we're hanging out and waiting, you know, and our attendees are here as well. I'm sure folks would love to know, what have you guys been doing through quarantine? So if anybody wants to share any fun stories. Tom,
Farming.
start with you. Or Gina.
Farming, lots of farming in the backyard for sure. Zucchini, cucumber, everything.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, COVID farming, I guess that's what everybody's doing right now.
It's definitely a stress relieving as well. I started gardening myself.
Yeah.
In here, yes. I don't have a garden. I have a terrace, but I took a couple of trips to the nursery when I was still able to access one and got a amount of plants and pots. And I have a nice terrace full of, you know, nice green and flowers. So yeah, I got an avocado tree. So that will take years, of course, but you know, one must just try, yeah.
That's a good one. What about you, Tom or Chase?
I've been hunkering down. I think we've been doing the same thing, going to the nursery and putting together a nice selection of plants on our patio and just refurbishing everything there, getting some new furniture for it. Definitely a good time for some home renovations.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I need to be going to the nursery as soon as I can after
Missing
hearing
out.
everybody talk. I've been spending a lot of time in Supernatural on Oculus Quest, which is a new VR fitness application. And
Oh, cool.
speaking of nature, one of the things that it does really well is that it puts you in the middle of a 360-degree nature scene. And so like you're doing, you know, an exercise on the top of a volcano or like in the middle of the ocean. And I really have been very grateful to see something other than my one-bedroom apartment in San Francisco during those times. And so I very much appreciated that application during this time.
Yeah, definitely being in the VR space, you know, this is a good time to experience fun games and workouts and whatnot. Oh, hey, Eunice. Good morning. Hi, Eunice.
Hi.
So we've got everybody here except for Nonny. And so we're just waiting on her, and we'll get the panel discussion started. And We were just catching up a little bit since our audience is watching live as well, to just catch up and see what you did fun for quarantine or anything to keep you sane through these times.
Played some VR games,
Mhm.
right? Yes.
That's what Tom was just saying.
It is amazing though. I remember my very first VR experience was just sitting in a Flickr photo. I know it sounds strange, but just sitting in a still picture in the center of that photo, and I believe it was like a starry sky with a tree. I still remember that moment as if that was like one of my moments in my own memory. So, you know, as much as I do appreciate, especially like the farming and the nursery, I'm really excited about, you know, this escape hatch that virtual reality can provide, especially during a time when you're asked to stay at home, you know, the majority of your existence, you know, to keep everybody safe, which is important.
Well, why don't we jump into it? Eunice, do you think we should start? And hopefully Nonny will join us soon.
Yeah, let's do that. And maybe we could get into some of the presentation. And then by the time we wrap that up, we can get there. That might be her joining right now too.
Perfect. Just in time. Let me just make sure you're unmuted, Nonny. Hi, Nonny. How are you?
Good morning, you guys. How are you?
Good morning. So let's jump into it. Our discussion is on seizing the moment. Has XR finally arrived? You know, as we were talking about, life in quarantine has been challenging, but immersive technologies are tailor-made for this moment. The seismic changes reshaping every aspect of society, create new opportunities for AR and VR to have a transformative impact. Our all-star lineup of panelists today will help us figure out how we can seize this moment as storytellers. And our moderator is a dear friend, and I'm so grateful for her, Eunice. Thank you so much for joining us and helping us to curate our wonderful panel of visionaries. Eunice Shin is a visionary herself and one of the most brilliant strategists I know. She works at Profit and specializes in direct-to-consumer growth strategies across content, commerce, and community. She's passionate about turning technology disruption into innovative opportunities to improve the overall brand and customer experience. She's a well-established advisor with trusted relationships across media and entertainment, gaming, AR, VR, and AI landscapes. Before joining Profit, she was the managing director and the head of Nat Digital. And with more than 2 decades of consulting experience, Eunice has helped clients including Disney, Warner Media, Sony, Electronic Arts, AT&T, and the LA Summer Olympics 2028 on various initiatives. Eunice, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Kat. That was so sweet of you to do that long intro. But thanks for everyone sticking through with us as we kind of got a little delay in getting started. But we have a pretty incredible panel of participants today. And just kind of on the screen here, we have people who can speak to all of these areas of being a producer, director, writer, our own futurist here, an agent. And so I think we're going to get a really well-rounded perspective about all the things and exciting things that are happening across XR. Mixed reality, which includes augmented reality, virtual reality, and things in between, and all things immersive entertainment. So we'd love for, we have a lot of things to discuss, but we'd love for you guys to chime in. If you have questions, please throw it up in the Q&A, and we'll try to get to them as much as we possibly can. Without further ado, here's a quick introduction of our panelists, and then I'm going to allow everyone to kind of go around and give an intro of themselves before we dive in. So Tom, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Tom Emrich. I'm the VP of Product at Eighthwall. And at Eighthwall, we're on a mission to make reality content for everyone. And we're doing this by equipping developers, brands, and organizations with powerful tools to create augmented reality and virtual reality for the web, or what's known as WebAR and WebVR. So we have an AR engine that enables world tracking, image target, and face effect augmented reality that can all be accessed with no app required. You just click a link or you scan a QR code and you're right in. And our developers, they benefit not only from this frictionless experience, but our proprietary AR technology gives them the widest reach possible, as it's compatible with nearly 3 billion smartphones across iOS and Android. And actually our face effect technology, which we just debuted in May, has an even greater reach, as you can access that on smartphones, tablets, and desktop devices. And this technology has been used by countless agencies and brands across various industry verticals, including the film and music and entertainment industry. In fact, one of the examples I'd love to highlight is one that was created by Trigger, the mixed reality agency for Sony Pictures' Jumanji: The Next Level with The Rock. And it was an amazing web AR experience, the first to integrate with Amazon Lex voice services, which essentially allowed for users to use their voice in augmented reality to traverse around the Jumanji map and enter the Jumanji world in the space in front of them. So I'm really excited to be here. I've been in augmented reality for now, this is my 11th year, and I'm excited especially to talk about the massive opportunity of AR and VR today. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Tom. Paula, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Well, first of all, pleasure to be here, and thank you to Eunice for inviting me, and to the Winston Baker team for organizing and putting together such an amazing team of speakers, Gina, Tom, Levi, and Nonny. It's such a pleasure to be here. So my name is Paula Muñoz Vega, and I am a producer. I've been working in entertainment for the last 10 years. I started working in entertainment in theater. Then I moved on to work in branded content. I work a little bit on mobile apps as well in Calm.com when they were launching their VR, their Spanish-speaking content. I then move on into work a little bit in VR. I work in early game development. I was part of the team organizing what is called like the game pipeline, and also in the creative aspects of launching a game. And then on the story side, part of it on the narrative. Then with Hyperator VR, I then transitioned to work into film and television, which is what I've been doing for the last 3 years and at Anonymous Content. I'm a producer there, and I've been working mostly in television and film, and I'm slowly kind of going back into VR as well right now. I have a project that I'm developing in the music space with a couple of like really interesting EDM artists, and I have a really exciting, I can't share many details right now, but I have a really excited music video director attached to the project at this point, so we're really ready to take out to market very soon, which is something that I would love to talk to Levi later on. And, and on the film side of things, one of the most recent projects I have right now, it's actually here at the market at Cannes on the virtual market. It's Joyka with Thomasin McKenzie. You know, she was in Jojo Rabbit, and she's going to be the lead in our project. It's based on a true story, and from an American ballerina that was to become the first prima ballerina at the Bolshoi, Joan Womack. So all in short, I think I have a kind of well-rounded background in, I guess, what we can call performative arts, with a transition into, you know, working from a physical space into a virtual space. And for me, virtual reality is just a medium where you can have actors, performers of all sorts, dancers and directors just kind of utilize the medium to fulfill their creative visions at the utmost. I think it's just that place that allows for so much empathy between an audience and a creator. And I think that that's what we're seeing that is happening more and more, that the kind of works that are happening in VR are just really about empathy these days, which is what I think the medium offers himself so well to accomplish. So all that said, yeah, I'll just leave the room for someone else.
Awesome. Nonny.
Hello, good morning, everybody. I think the first thing to note is that the world is not flat, right? And there's no reason why our content, the way that we experience our world in news, entertainment, education, training, we're going to experience it with volume spatially. And I think that's what makes XR so cool, is because we are moving from this idea that everything that we represent in an experience is flat to something that actually resembles more closely to the real world. And one of the things at Emblematic Group, right, I guess I had my first piece in 2007, which was a virtual Guantanamo Bay prison in Second Life, and then ended up in 2012 with the first virtual reality piece ever shown at Sundance. I've been lucky enough to introduce and work with extraordinary artists like Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu, It's fun to get that, be there with him with that first VR Oscar. So this journey's been extraordinary. But what's amazing right now, and at this very moment, we can start to represent our worlds straight through the web, WebXR. That's what we're doing in Reach.love. We're making it so that anybody can not have to go through the pain I had to. I had to become a C# coder in order to start making my experiences. And I know how hard that is. I know the engineering takes a year. I know the difficulty of that. So we started working on how to throw out all the existing paradigms for how you make content and make a really simple button-based system that lets anybody start to participate. And that's what Reach.love is. Welcome anybody to just kind of sign up and start working on our beta. But the main thing is that, I continue to be lucky enough to, as an artist, continuously push the envelope in the kind of content I'm making, and then start to translate what I've learned into things that I can let other people tell their stories, which I think is equally valid and important, and a kind of at a crucial juncture. But to give you an example, we've been working on one piece about a teenager named Stanley Hayami, who was taken from his home in San Gabriel and stuck in a Japanese American concentration camp in Heart Mountain, Wyoming. And he was an incredible writer, an incredible artist, and we're taking his writing and his art and we're making it all into a volumetric experience. His drawings come to life, and we actually use photogrammetry to put you in the actual Heart Mountain barracks. But then we did a WebXR version of that, and The Guardian embedded it in their story about moving, art institutions moving to virtual, and we saw 45,000 views. So my guess is that was probably the very first narrative experience in the web that was given to the public to try out, and 45,000 people thought it was worth experiencing the piece. So with that, it's been really fun to go from what I have behind me, all the headsets I used to have to 3D print because there was no headsets to do what I want to do, to today where we can have anybody use WebXR and use their computer, use a headset, use a mobile phone to access this content. And it's beautiful, all these beautiful people starting to make stuff.
Great. Thank you so much, Nonny. Gina.
Yeah, is it my turn? Hi, my name is Gina, and I'm a filmmaker and also a professor at the Department of Film, Television, and Digital Media at UCLA. I'm actually relatively new to VR world, so I've been making feature films for the last 20 years, and my filmography includes Never Forever, starring Vera Farmiga, and that was the very first South Korea-US co-production officially and distributed widely in Korea and United States and France. And also my most recent feature film stars Michelle Yeoh, and it's titled Final Recipe. And it was widely released in China. And then once I finished those films, I actually wanted to go back to my video art years, as a matter of fact, because I majored in studio art and still has a very strong affinity to new media and video art and new technology. And I was fortunate enough to be introduced to the world of VR and XR through a panel just like this at a film festival. I was invited to moderate an international panel conference at Busan Film Festival in 2016. And in order to moderate it, I had to just kind of take crash courses and do a lot of research and everything. And then I was just blown away by the possibility of the medium VR, virtual reality, as well as augmented reality, and also to extended reality, because what I was looking for was some sort of like I know that this is like a now cliche, but really empathy without exploitation. So one thing that I was not very satisfied with a 2D cinema when I was a feature filmmaker was 2D cinema is, I mean, we don't have to make a reference to any like heady articles or anything like that, but it's naturally very voyeuristic. It puts so much distance between the viewer and what's going on screen. And that didn't make me happy, especially because my thing as a researcher as well as filmmaker is ethics of representation. Especially when I try to depict a transnational gender violence, which has been a huge theme for all of my filmmaking. So when I was introduced to VR, I realized that this is a new medium because it really allows you to be there instead of just kind of, eating a popcorn and have like this huge distance between the screen, what's going on screen, and just have a voyeuristic pleasure out of what's going on screen as a viewer. And from that kind of like epiphany, I developed a story. Well, I started delve into the topic that I always wanted to make a film out of, which amounted to my very first VR film titled Bloodless that somehow ended up winning Best VR Story Award at Venice Film Festival and Best VR Award at the Saloniki Film Festival, as well as I was selected as the Best VR Storytelling by Filmmaker Magazine in 2017. So that film, Bloodless, was shot on VR location, and I don't know if you guys know about this, but then US Army is still stationed in Korea. It's been there since 1950, and what ended up happening was around the US camp bases, there are these special tourism zones, which is like restricted area for Korean citizens. And it's basically brothels and bars and restaurants and clubs for US soldiers explicitly. And it involved about 1 million prostitutes so far, cumulatively. So I wanted to make a film about it, and there was one murder incident that kind of stayed with me because I was a student activist when I was a college student in Seoul. And there was a very brutal murder committed by a US soldier stationed in Korea of a female sex worker in Korea. And I've been struggling to find a way to tell the story with its 2D cinema, but I wasn't able to do that for the longest time. And then when I was introduced to the new world of virtual reality, I was like, this is it. This is the medium that I've been looking for. And with this, I can tell the story. So with my passion for the topic combined with the possibility of the medium itself, virtual reality, somehow it became pretty explosive, I guess, and I got incredible reviews and critical acclaims, if I may say so. And now I'm working on my second VR film titled Monkey House. It's about basically it's like a concentration camp that resembles the structure of Auschwitz. So what happened was during the 70s, U.S. government pressured Korean government to clean up the brothels because the STD rate, infection rate during the time for the US soldiers stationed in Korea was up to 75%. So they wanted to lower it, and they wanted to purify the brothels and special tourism zone. So what they did was they made all the sex workers their name tags with a number, and behind it they had the STD test results. And if you don't wear that number tag, and if you fail to get tested, or if you didn't test whatever, they would drag you to this facility titled Monkey House. That was the nickname because people who are locked up there looked like monkeys kind of at the zoo pounding on the windows. Yeah, that was one of the most inhumane, sad underbelly of the modern Korean history. And that facility stopped. This facility is no longer in operation, obviously, since 2004, but then the building still exists because it doesn't belong to Korean government, nor it doesn't belong to the US government. So it's an abandoned building that's haunting. And my next project is going there and film the space as a virtual reality film, as well as I am also working on an augmented reality film that people actually visit the site. And there will be some community effort involved in that augmented reality project as well. So that's what I'm working on.
Awesome, that's great. Thank you, Gina. A lot of storytelling, and so we'll jump more into that in the topics as well. But last but not least, Chase.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having me. It's really exciting to be surrounded by so many influential people and experts in this space. I'm excited for the conversation we're going to have. I'm Chase Levy. I work in CAA's digital media department, leading the agency's immersive media and interactive content strategy. For any of those who aren't familiar with CAA, it's a global entertainment, talent, and sports agency. We represent some of the world's biggest actors, actresses, filmmakers, athletes, music artists, and more. I joined the agency in 2016 after coming from a VR production company. And that was when the agency was really starting to build out its immersive media team due to the big wave of interest in VR among clients, and as a lot of the PC and mobile platforms were in a bit of an arms race to build out their libraries and compete for an audience. Now I represent some of the leading endemic immersive and interactive creators and companies, including Riot, Media Monks, Doug Lyman's interactive company 30 Ninjas, Viola Davis's company Juvie Productions, the AI company Soul Machines, and award-winning creators Kevin Cornish and Bernie Sue, among some others. I also work with our traditional clients, some of our A-list storytellers and talent across TV, film, music, and sports and beyond, who are interested in the intersection of technology and storytelling and can use the help navigating this ever-changing marketplace. And also those who are using VR and AR as mediums for fan engagement and consumer engagement, as that's become much more of a use case for the technology. My role is primarily revolving around helping our clients develop a slate of content, attaching any necessary creative elements to projects, whether it's a producer, or a director, or a piece of talent, finding a brand partner, and I take their projects out to market for financial and distribution partnerships. And I also do a lot of work with brands who are really seeing the value of VR and AR for consumer engagement and a way of telling of brand storytelling. And then in addition to in-headset VR and mobile AR and even the headset AR, a big focus of mine is developing and pitching interactive projects to some of the bigger 2D content platforms that have been entering the interactive space. I know a lot of people are familiar with Netflix's interactive film, Black Mirror Bandersnatch, which invites viewers to make decisions throughout the movie that affect the story and what's happening to the characters. And now we're seeing more streamers and more of these content platforms that are starting to experiment with interactive storytelling. So I do a lot of partnering with our endemic interactive creators and some of those traditional production companies and filmmakers who have expertise in this scripted or unscripted TV space to help sell their projects to these buyers. And I think this is a really important step in priming audiences for active participation in stories. The goal is as the hardware becomes more ubiquitous and hopefully more mainstream over the next couple of years, audiences are going to start to be primed for this active participation in stories, and they'll be hungry for more of this content. And once they go out and buy their headsets, that's what they'll be wanting to do. So I'm really excited to see where the space goes over the next couple of years, and especially as this feels like a very important moment for it.
Thank you, Chase. Well, that was a great segue kind of to our next section here really quickly. These are just some of the headlines that have popped up in the last 60 days. So obviously the world is going through an incredible amount of change with the global pandemic. And VR has gotten a little bit of the limelight in the situation that people are at home, not the ability to go outside and experience. And it's helped the industry to grow in some ways, and it's hindered it in other ways. Probably before the pandemic, location-based experiences was a big focus in an area for immersive entertainment. So obviously those physical capabilities have shut down, but I think the ability and the thinking around global and immersive presence has rose into the occasion a bit. And I think just some of the biggest headlines over the past few months has been Fortnite. And though it's not traditional virtual reality, it is immersive, and it's a gaming platform. And the fact that Travis Scott was able to go into the platform and to do a global tour within the platform, drawing in millions of players, but also at the same time drawing millions of revenue through that process, I think it got a lot of people really interested in how immersive can play a fact in bringing entertainment to people who are virtually distant. physically distant into a virtual world. We're seeing more of that activity happening with like Wave VR and music festivals. Minecraft is doing the same thing. And we're seeing, you know, some of the bigger companies like Facebook, Oculus, and Apple continuing to make changes and innovation in the headwear space. I think one of the biggest challenges is that for a very long time, I think the VR industry at large and the public at large have been waiting on VR to really become more mainstream based upon headsets and the accessibility of headsets and the price point of headsets. And I think what we're realizing during this time of the pandemic is that you may not have to be limited to that. And we may not have to wait till we have, headsets in every single household. So it's a really interesting time for people who are storytellers in XR and in immersive. And we'll jump into that a little bit and shed some light into how we feel like there's a really interesting bridge moment in the space. The topics we're going to cover today, and hopefully we'll get to all of these within our period, is talk about some of the current projects we're seeing in development, things that are getting us really excited across the panelists here, some of the distribution deals and how it's looking across not just in the United States, but from a global perspective, and where things are really where it's taken off in Asia and how it's looking there from a distribution standpoint. The rise of these immersive platforms, we talked about really where we feel like it's a bridge, and the whole concept of metaverse and what does that mean to storytelling and how do we get to that point. And then what we're excited about, and we're seeing that VR is such a compelling canvas and platform for storytelling as it relates to human-driven social cause stories. So we'll talk about that as well. And then again, if you have questions for our panelists or for us to all kind of tackle, please throw it up in our Q&A box and we'll try to get to it. All righty. So with that said, I'm gonna get rid of this PowerPoint so you guys could see a little bit of our faces. Before we jump into that, we wanted to run a few polls just to get a sense for who's in our audience. So we know how well versed you are with VR and where your interest lies. So here's our first one. If you guys could take the time and help us get to know our audience. And then if we can close that up. And then I think we have another one. Okay, great. A lot of producers, filmmakers. Fantastic. A good mix. It's awesome. And then our next poll. All right, and if we could wrap that up and look at the results. Fantastic. Well, I think that the panel, this is perfect. I think all of our panelists are great at being able to speak to all of these topics, so that's great. Thank you so much for everyone who responded to the polls. So first, let's talk about what's exciting. What are we seeing? And Chase, you mentioned it a little bit in your intro about all the activity that seems to be happening. And I think as an agency, you're at the heart of where a lot of these deals are taking place. So tell us what's exciting. Has the momentum changed? Who's interested in getting involved in immersive projects? If you
can I definitely think momentum is changing as bleak of a moment as this is in the world right now with the pandemic. It's been an interesting moment for immersive media to really be seen as a tool for connectivity and a way to bring positivity. And I think that due to the halt in TV and film productions, live sports, and music events, it has brought a lot of eyes to the latest advancements in VR and AR that I think a lot of people weren't previously really aware of. I'm seeing in terms of exciting opportunities, I'm seeing big talent that's more available now than ever to explore the medium and to participate in some of these experiences. I think especially in the music space, we saw at the beginning of the quarantine phase of COVID, a lot of music artists were live streaming from their homes, inviting their fans into their homes through Instagram Live, YouTube, Facebook. And now, especially with, I know what you mentioned with Travis Scott and Fortnite and what The Wave is doing, you know, they have their John Legend concert today. There are these much deeper, more powerful forms of engagement and opportunities for talent to really connect with their fans in a time when so many of their fans won't be able to see them live for who knows how long. And also on the brand side of things, again, when will consumers feel comfortable going to retail locations? When will people be traveling the way that they used to? I don't know what rules will be like in terms of going to a store and trying on clothes and accessories. And I think mobile AR specifically, due to its reach and its scale, is going to play a big role in e-commerce by allowing consumers to safely engage with their favorite brands, and also as a way to connect with their consumers and with customers in a humanized way. I mean, we're seeing this with some AI companies like Soul Machines, who's a client of ours. They're creating virtual customer service reps and digital avatars that consumers can talk to, whether it's through their phone or through the web, and have these open-ended conversations with them and get a sense of, one, learning about maybe some of the philanthropic initiatives of these companies, but also learning about here's my skincare routine, what's the best product for me. I think, again, our focus at the agency is more so on the entertainment aspect of immersive media, but there are all these really important and powerful ways that the technology can be used just for fan engagement and consumer engagement. And as you also touched on, we're doing a lot in terms of virtual events, and this isn't necessarily all in VR. A lot of it's online just because you want to reach the biggest audience possible. And we're seeing a lot of the platforms that are really doing this the right way are making these events available in headset and also on mobile or on the web. I think we'll be seeing many more of these concert experiences. When sports come back without spectators, we'll be seeing these innovative ways for fans to be able to watch sports and feel like they're still immersed in that atmosphere. And I'm excited to see more of that. I think a lot of that's in development right now.
What's exciting though is that as more consumers get introduced to immersive, it helps with adoption, right? So it's not just the hardcore gamers who are comfortable putting on a headset, as you have things that, whether it's around AR and mobile shopping and things of that nature, or experiencing 2D concerts, but it's all helping people to kind of understand how immersive content can be consumed and how naturally people would want a little bit more of that. Nonny, I think what's been awesome is you've been able to ride the wave of VR for quite some time, right? And we've gone through a lot of ups and downs through the years.
I've certainly tumbled in those waves sometimes.
Right? We've had moments of like glee and we've had moments of like terror and sadness, but you know, what excites you now, Nonny? What's changed and kind of at your point in time as being a creative and a maker, what's exciting for you?
Well, listen, I have to give a shout out to the Quest headset. I really do. You know, no computer, laptop, or any computer, and you can just put the device on. And, you know, I don't know. I have had so much fun during the pandemic training to be a Jedi. I can tell you for sure. And another game called Pistol Whip. It has built up my muscle strength. You know, I mean, like, wow, right? Okay, so that's the experience of the full body experience. It's been so much fun. But then to translate it into stories that I care about, right? You know, whether it is the Japanese American concentration camp story, doing a big one about Lyme disease. But we're also having some fun making really interesting pieces we're going to be doing in our platform in WebXR that can reach, you know, around the globe. If you have a headset like the Quest, you can start walking around. If you don't, you can use your keyboard or your mobile phone with a major fashion brand in Italy. I can't say who it is, but I can tease that we're going to have a teaser out in about a week and a half on this. But like, this gives you an idea that you can't go to a fashion show. You can't be there. But the nice thing about also what we're building is that once the piece has been experienced in a synchronous way, where a lot of people are coming on at once, then they can come back and see it in an asynchronous way. I think this is really interesting for storytellers out there and producers and thinking about distribution. With WebXR, you can now have the experience remain available in a long tail way. And I think that is also something new for WebXR, where you didn't, you have to download, et cetera. And on the flip side of saying, like, in the Oculus headset's been a breakthrough, I think WebXR is a breakthrough because we don't have to be in, any wall garden of Oculus or Google Play or Steam. We can literally embed these in websites, and people can control where their content goes, and they can control how it's distributed. And that to me is also really important, because like when I did a piece about Project Syria and put it up on Steam, the amount of hate I got, the amount of, I stopped putting any personal stuff on my Facebook page and stuff because of the vitriol that was aimed at me for defending refugees, children refugees. So, I think that control to me is also very important. So these are all really exciting things. We can be great storytellers. We can do these incredible synchronous things. We can distribute now, and we can control where our content and how our content is distributed in a way that I think is really wonderful for any storyteller.
Right. And it's powerful. I mean, it's interesting because a couple of years ago that wasn't possible. So I think that's fantastic. So we are in this really interesting space, right, where we have some ability to tell fully immersive stories, like Nonny's been working on, where you use a headset like an Oculus Quest. And by the way, it's been hard to get a hold of during this whole pandemic. And I think that you can still get a few on the Oculus website in case anyone wants to go check that out. But it's been difficult. The Sony PlayStation VR headsets have been selling out as well, so it's been pretty interesting. But you have a segment of people who have the headsets, but you also have a huge segment of people who don't, but are going onto platforms like a Minecraft or a Fortnite, or using AR tools, and they're using memojis, and they're using filters, which are in some ways a little bit of AR. So it's really interesting that we're getting people more accustomed to using immersive technologies. And Tom, would love to kind of ping you now as a future someone who's been working in VR and AR for many years. And I felt like you have a really interesting perspective in our point in time now, because I think for so many of the industry, we've been waiting and waiting and waiting. And I think there's a glorious concept that, what are we waiting for? We're actually building some incredible things now and can engage in now.
Yeah, and I think now is a really important time, because we have platforms that allow for scale, and scale is really essential for content. Your ability to have more users see your content means that these users are going to be able to understand the value of virtual 3D AR VR, and therefore after many times of engaging with this type of a content will continue to drive up the demand for AR and VR, which is essentially what we need in order to get to the place where everybody will put on a pair of glasses or more people will buy a headset. So what was really clear, especially during this pandemic to me, was that I was hearing more and more people use this term virtual, and talking a lot about virtual spaces, Fortnite, for example, but also in going to many different conferences, having more of this like hybrid approach to virtual reality and augmented reality, leveraging many of the platforms that are available to everybody, a desktop, a laptop, a smartphone, as well as dabbling in virtual reality headsets. And so I think this like bridge period that you're talking about, which is that it's not a stopgap, it's a critical period that can deliver a lot of value, a lot of ROI, and it's extremely necessary for especially the end user as well as industry to wrap their head around what Nonny astutely pointed out, which is this big jump from 2D to 3D. This is a hard jump. Although we're 3D creatures in a 3D world, we've been working and creating in 2D for a long time. And so to break that paradigm, to break through that wall is going to be, it's going to be harder than we think. And there are a lot of things that we need to learn and educate ourselves on in order to even be ready for walking around with that 24/7 pair of glasses that look like, your everyday glasses today, but they are AR smart glasses. And so wrapping your head around 3D, understanding virtual are the baby steps, I think the necessary foundational elements to help all of us get to that point where we're ready for, full immersive AR and VR. And we're seeing this especially in web AR and web VR, in being able to really unlock the power of the web allows for content creators, storytellers, brands to be able to reach audiences without friction, which is extremely important. And especially with the ability to embed web AR in particular into websites, it's going to allow for the stumble upon, discovery method, which I think is really critical for the entire industry, where instead of having a separate destination that we're asking the audience to go to, they're going to start to just discover augmented reality and virtual reality content on the web as they do today with video, GIFs, and photos. And that's really the space that we need to get at. And I guess the big thing I want to hit home is I keep talking about the devices that people have today, desktops, smartphones. And this is critical again because of the reach. And what we're seeing at 8Ball is we're seeing very powerful experiences that are delivering real ROI for the brand or the artist, while at the same time completely immersing the user in an experience that they aren't able to get with a 2D video. And a good example of this, and speaking to what Chase was bringing up about bringing experiences home, which is like the strategy today, right? Now that we can't leave the home, we need to bring these experiences to the home. And we're seeing a lot of this happening in the music industry where you're able to use web AR to put full concerts into the living room in front of you. And the Real Estate Band, which is an indie band, did this on their Quarantine tour. They used 2D video actually in 3D space to actually create a concert hall experience complete with the stage and them on the stage, which you could then, using web AR, so just a link, no app required, place it as either like a tabletop experience if you just wanted to watch like a mini little Real Estate Band perform right in front of you on your kitchen table, or you could scale that up to actually make it feel like you're there at the concert. And to Nonny's point, what's great about that is that you could time box that. You could say this is going to be happening, June 25th at 11 a.m. and everybody, watches that together as a shared experience. Or you can use it as like a published piece of content that anybody can experience on a go forward basis. And I find that really exciting. So I think, we really need to acknowledge the importance of 3D and understanding 3D, the importance of virtual and leveraging platforms that we have that have been around with us for many years, smartphones, tablets, desktops, while starting to sprinkle in, the technologies that are starting to become more available, like the Oculus Quest. So I think that's what this bridge period is all about. And then the last point I want to kind of put out there is that I talked a lot about scale from a distribution perspective. So scale and the ability to reach as many users as possible is important, but also being able to scale your content is important. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of investment for AR and VR in 3D assets. And this is a new type of content and new type of medium for storytellers, brands, organizations, and the ability to invest in 3D and then be able to use that 3D in various platforms is also extremely critical for the industry. So, creating a 3D version of Travis Scott can now be used in Fortnite, in Minecraft, in AR, in VR. It can also just be used on the TravisScott.com website where you can twist them around. It can be used as a CGI asset in video. It can be used as part of your photo shoot in lieu of Travis Scott. And so like thinking about not just scale as part of the distribution strategy, but also about the scaling of your assets and the content that you're investing in is extremely important. And all this is happening today. And that's what's really exciting. It's like we're talking about today opportunities, not waiting for these elusive smart glasses that are going to literally take the AR industry in particular to break the laws of physics to actually create. So we have some time to get to that point where that future that we're all salivating over is going to happen. In the meantime, there's real work to be done, real opportunities to be had, and real learning and fun essentially to experience. So I'm quite excited about that.
It's great, Tom, because I think, as we've all been talking about the consumption of immersive technologies and immersive content, but how immersive technologies are being used in the creative storytelling process well, right? In the production process. So we're seeing companies out there leveraging game engine in order to create. So you saw that with like The Lion King, you're seeing it with The Mandalorian and other numerous animation projects that are out there that are changing the way that creators are building out assets and using them. I'd love to talk about distribution for a minute. Gina, I think you've had an example where you've had pretty wide distribution of your VR film. It was widely received, and I'd love for you to touch upon the reception of that from a global standpoint, how distribution was perhaps different across different regions, and in particular Asia, how they were able to receive it and where it was distributed and your approach in that. Would love if you could talk about that.
Okay. So that is actually a really great question and also a really interesting question. So when I finished Bloodless, my VR film, it was, I made it in 2016 and then the distribution started in 2017. First, mostly film festivals, and secondly, the museums and galleries, and thirdly, we were picked up by Divergent Cinema, the VR distribution and sales rep. And then MK2 France, which is traditional film distribution company, also distributed it through their VR pods. So that was kind of like in a way, specific because it was like a theater VR. And then after that, in Asia, especially in China and Korea, we have places called VR Pang, VR room. It's like Pang is like a room or salon, so it's like a VR salon. So. And for whatever reason in Japan and Korea, it's like very particular kind of phenomenon that when the personal computer started to expand and became consumer product, there are all this like PC rooms. So you go in and use the personal computer at your will. And then same thing with this VR room. So you go in and watch all this like VR films. And we even have like a DVD rooms that disappears. So all of these like VR rooms were very, very popular in Korea for a while, especially in the year 2017 and 18. And they had enormous amount of content, and then they played it, like they had like a really fancy video games, interactive games and whatnot. But at the same time, they had like a kind of like a VR cinematic content as well, like my phone. And then they were incredibly popular, but then it kind of sort of simmered down a little bit in 2019, I have to say, probably because the initial responses, the initial enthusiasm, and like whatever is new, especially in Korea, people just kind of, the young people just kind of go and consume like crazy. And after that, they realize that, wow, VR can be so useful for education and like medical uses, and making incredible commercials. For example, the most famous VR commercial that they made was cosmetic company, and this beautiful celebrity actor holds your hands and takes you to the beautiful island and things like that. So that was like, that literally made people's heart like, wow, VR is amazing. But after that, I think there was like a real lack of kind of like a storytelling with depth and integrity, because a lot of filmmakers ventured into it, but then they failed in adopting the technology fully because they were so fixated on the traditional filmmaking in a way that there should be shot flow. Oh my God, I can't believe I cannot control what people see, and then they're so frustrated and they just left their business, which is like a weird pity. But now I can see that it's changing very clearly, and the change of the content and storytelling will inevitably change the distribution in Asia as well, because what's been happening is telecommunication companies like it's like AT&T, LG, you guys all know LG. There is a company called LG U+, which is part of LG's telecommunication company that does mobile technology. They created enormous amount of content last year. Like for them, it's like a massive amount, and that's the most important thing. And they not only distributed, I think they kind of produced like 3,000 short VR pieces in like less than 6 months. And they distribute themselves, and they also sell it as chunk to other countries. So that has become really popular, which inevitably, actually, it's kind of backward, but stimulated the VR business into storytelling as well. And what's also really happening in terms of pandemic is, well, there were like a really hardcore, snobby 2D cinema people, of course, and they're like, well, you know, VR is amazing and it's fun, but it will never replace 2D cinema. But, well, guess what? We can't go to the theaters anymore. And the people who are resistant to watch things on flat screen at home, they are doing it. Everybody's doing, you know, watching everything on Netflix and Amazon Prime. Same thing will inevitably happen to VR. They will have to adopt and adapt themselves to watch and consume new contents. And that really is stimulating filmmakers to kind of look at this new medium all over again. And what's been really interesting is that because all the production kind of stopped and on pause right now, I've been getting a lot of calls from talents in Hollywood saying that, well, for example, I had this TV series that I've been developing for a long time, and we're going to go start shooting next year, but then the talent is like, well, there is no way that we can do this next year. But then, Gina, do you have any like VR project that we can make together? If it is just me and some like small crews on set on green screen, we can do it, right? And they're actually asking those questions and pitching me some ideas, which is really interesting, which will inevitably stimulate the industry to have more diverse contents and we're in-depth. I mean, we're amazing storytelling and all of that, and that will also stimulate the distribution as well.
Yeah. So interesting, right? Because in VR and in immersive, it hasn't been a really standard process for how projects come to life. Right. And as a producer, Paula, I would love your perspective on this because, you know, in the traditional sense, you find a story, you find someone to finance it, you're in development and you kind of go through the traditional process and you have distribution and markets you go sell in. But for your VR or immersive projects, Paula, as a producer, what are all the different pieces that you have to be able to pull together in a very non-traditional, non-fixed environment?
Well, that is a very good question. It's a very complex answer to accomplish that.
It all depends, right? It depends on each one.
Yeah. Well, I think in my experience, I think it's back in 2017, there was a VR project that Eunice, I don't know if you remember about Exit back in the day. It was supposed to be like an early on VR escape room that we were trying to put together. We talked to putting that together took, you know, we had a sponsor, a manufacturer, like AMD was involved at some point because they're, you know, because of their chips, and we could just kind of incorporate that processing power within like the experience. It was supposed to be this really huge, like big kind of sort of like a thriller film meets a escape room. And then this was Dreamscape, by the way. So we were kind of quite ahead of trying to put this together. And we had a director, a screenwriter that was kind of learning the way of like creating and writing for VR, which is also something interesting to see, because when you talk to writers, they, you know, it just goes from a writer can create a story and in a second, and just so creative, right? And it's the same for filmmakers. They just have the ability to just come up with a vision. I think in terms of adapting for content or just creating content for VR, which is a completely different media, you need a different type of mindset. And I think some people are able to see it and understand it. It happens just instantly. And for others, it's more of a learning curve. And I think that for some writers, it's not just about, so on one end, you have the technical aspects of it, that learning curve, and also understanding what this new medium is. And on the other end, you have people that just naturally kind of drive to think in a more avant-garde type of way, where for them, they're just not limited to a frame. They're not limited to a device. They just kind of think of a story of almost like a brand. A brand has the ability to kind of have an ethos into the way that they see a product, right? What it represents. For some creators, having a story to tell works in a similar fashion. And I think that probably Nonny can see that when working with fashion brands, and also Levi can see the same when working with creators and directors and writers. I think it's just about like having this kind of let's call it like bigger concept that then you have to translate into a medium. And I think VR kind of, it's similar to that. You just have to be comfortable with being free and having the flexibility. It's almost like when you have an artist and you have to be, you know, we talk a lot about mastering a technique, mastering, and that will give you freedom. And I think with VR is kind of in a similar way. You have to be so comfortable in mastering your own craft that then they will give you the freedom to experiment. And in terms of finding and putting these pieces together, I think you need to have a creator that is comfortable enough with their own, I guess, vision, and also have a director is so comfortable with their vision, and together kind of you have to find people that get along really well. And that is the most challenging part, to find people that come from two different worlds and say, okay, I want to experiment in this medium. I like your vision. I think I understand it. And I think I can enhance your vision. And I think that this is how we can do it, and let's try it. And I think finding people that is willing to go through this process perhaps is one of the most challenging things. And because you need to have that, it's a leap of faith. And I think sometimes that can be a little bit challenging, but you know, as producers, oftentimes it's our work just to be there to support and to try to find the right creatives that are willing to undergo through this process. And I think that it's very rewarding once you are able to achieve that. So, you know, we just have to love it.
Nonny, you wanted to add to that?
I was just going to say that I've worked with a lot of different directors over the years, and the amount of times I've had to say, no, scratch close up out of your script. No, you got to scratch close up out of your script. But Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu, when he sat me down with his first idea for Carne Arena, and we started, you know, talking about how that could work, he got it right away. He got spatial narrative and the sense of the body and the space. So it's really interesting to see who comes in, and you really have to get them out of the 2D, as you were saying, Gina, out of the 2D thinking and bringing them into the spatial thinking. And I think that that's, you know, it's going to really help grow this medium as more and more people get more comfortable. They'll see more content through the latest distribution that will inspire them to understand how they may be able to put their ideas in the spatial narrative arena. And I think that that's, you know, obviously going to be really fun for both Tom and I as people who are making, you know, tools also that people can use to do that. But also I think for everybody on this panel, you know, with the love of little love and help from people like Chase to broker the deals, I think that this is a really exciting time to be a filmmaker in this space. You know, you do have to remember, throw out the close-up, and, you know, the way that I would say is like, put your body in the space, close your eyes, now imagine the story happening around your body, and go from there. So that's just a thought of just a simple thinking about this, and seeing the extraordinary difference of who gets in and who gets it like that, and who just needs a little bit more inspiration to get there.
Well, and the power of immersive is in being able to really take people into a story, and the aspect that could create a greater sense of empathy and connection with the characters in your story. And so I think because of that, social causes and social storytelling has risen to the top of some of the really interesting things that we're seeing. I know Gina's been doing the Nonny, Paula, you guys have all been involved in these types of projects. You know, Nonny, would you want to share with, you know, the group here about some of the stories you've told that really have helped to push maybe untold stories before?
Yeah, no, I mean, the very first piece I did at Sundance, was ever at Sundance, was on hunger. I've done work on LGBTQ homelessness. I've done work on domestic violence. 2 pieces I'm going to call out are, one was we did a piece on what it's like to be on scene at a health clinic with the young women and what they get yelled at. So you get yelled at the same vitriol using real audio for young women going into health clinics. And the amazing thing is we took that piece and we showed it into very conservative areas, and we weren't asking people to change their views from being pro-abortion and anti-abortion. We wanted them to understand how horrible it was, the type of things that these young women have to go through, protesters yelling at them. And we've done a series of studies and found that it really changed people's views on whether protesters should be allowed to do that or not.
Mm-hmm.
The second piece we've done, or we did a couple pieces with Frontline and Novo, one on solitary confinement and one on climate change. And, you know, putting you with these NASA scientists on their boats, in their airplanes, when they're like dropping a thermometer down the airplane next to the toilet, you're like, oh, I could do that. And it really demystifies the science. It really offers an opportunity for people to understand the validity of the climate change data. And that, you can't do that in any other medium. I mean, you can watch that in a video, but if you're standing there and literally can be handed the thermometer to virtually drop this thing down and understand the process, we can start to offer a deeper connection to these stories that I just think it's very unique to this medium. We went through this thing with empathy, and then people were like anti-empathy. That's, you know, it's not an empathy machine. You know, I think Gina's work on this is very important about how we represent other people's stories. But I do think that I've come back the other way. I've made so much work now that it's really clear to me. You know, I was a correspondent for Newsweek. I worked on staff on TV shows. I made documentary films, but nothing compares to this medium for people to connect to the story and really understand things with the visceral depth that I've never experienced in anything else. Anything else.
And to add on,
yeah.
So something that I think is relevant to bring up, because it was heavily inspired by Nonny's work on Carne. We worked with Time. Mia Trams there brought us this amazing idea to recreate the March on Washington and Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech as an immersive location-based museum experience. And we worked, the Martin Luther King estate was heavily involved. We worked with Viola Davis as an executive producer and narrator of the experience. Riot, Juvie Productions, and Digital Domain were all involved. And American Family Insurance was the presenting sponsor. They had this Dream Fearlessly, a social impact initiative of theirs, which was tied in heavily and was part of the call to action for this. And over the couple of years that we were creating this project, it was already especially relevant, just drawing these parallels to some of the social issues of today and connecting them back to the civil rights movement. And while there has been some progress made, right now we are all seeing there really hasn't been enough progress. And this was a really impactful way of taking people back in time to 1963 to hear about all of the what was happening historically that led to this moment, and allowing users and participants in the experience to physically march with the crowd at the Lincoln Memorial and hear a truncated version of Dr. King's speech as he's speaking directly to you. And it was done in just an incredible way. And I think what was really impactful was as he finishes his speech and begins to step off from the podium, he takes he holds a beat and looks back and locks eyes with you as the participant, as a way to symbolically pass the baton. And I think it's experiences like this, unfortunately, the pandemic hit about a week or two after it launched, and it's currently only available in museums. So hopefully we can create the at-home version of that, and hopefully museums are up and running again soon. Because I think it's important for people to see, especially school children. When I was in school, a lot of the civil rights movement we learned about just through textbooks or from grainy audio or video, and now there's a way to really step back into these historical moments and experience them. And it creates this much deeper understanding of everything that's been happening and ways to draw these parallels to what's going on in the present day.
Yeah. I'd like to actually, if you don't mind, add like one thing that I find is really interesting with AR in particular. And I've always said that one of the killer apps of augmented reality is the democratization of special effects. And as everybody is a storyteller, now having a camera to document what they're doing and how they're feeling, one of the things that's happening in the filter space, the face filter space, as well as the world augmented reality experiences, is equipping everyday users with the ability to tell their story and enhance the social cause that they're talking about with a face filter, or by placing signs amongst the protests, essentially using CGI elements to take what they're trying to tell as part of their story, or to document what they're seeing within their own backyard, and add in ingredients that really elevate it and allow for it to be even more powerful. So I find that quite interesting, kind of watching what's happening in that space within smartphone AR.
Yeah, it's incredible, right? And I think it's all of these pieces that come together that, I think even, without everyone kind of seeing it, that these building blocks are there across AR, across VR, across 360, that we are really heading in a great direction for the ability to storytell in an immersive way. So I think we are up on our time. And I feel like we could go on for hours, and I love everyone's perspective. And I know we didn't get a chance for everyone to take up a ton of time, but I really appreciate everyone's perspective here. It was very rich. The experience across all of you is phenomenal. And so thank you for what you do. Keep doing it. And hopefully for the entire film industry, that this would be, you guys will continue to be a resource and guidance as we try to move this forward across the board. So Kat's back on.
Yes, thank you so much for each and every one of you. I know that there was one question that we didn't get to, but I think it's a question that a lot of attendees want to know, is if they wanted to in any way collaborate with any of you, is there a way to reach out to you, whether it's to DM you on your Twitter or an assistant's email or a website? How can we get a hold of each of you if they wanted to reach out to you in some way?
Right. You can just go to my website. You can just, email me. My website is being updated at the time, but there's an email button, so you can just click on it and just shoot me a note.
Gina?
Yeah, I also have a website. It's www.ginakimfilms.com. So there is cyanfilm2013@gmail.com email address there, so you can email me. I see that there is a question, so I will answer that as well in writing.
Oh, great. Chase?
You can feel free to email me at chase.levy@caa.com. I'm also very active on LinkedIn, so happy to connect and chat through there as well.
Great. Tom?
You can contact me either on Twitter, just my name, Tom Emrich, or Tom at8thwall.com.
I'm going to leave you with the truck in the background, but Nonny at reach.love is the best way. Nonny, Nonny at reach.love. You'll find me there.
Thank you. And Eunice?
Well, I was just going to say those other contact emails you guys gave out, that's like gold. So whoever participated in this session, you guys, and stuck out throughout the entirety of this panel, you guys just got gold on your fingertips. But my contact is Eshin, ESHIN @profit.com. And I'm happy to be a resource for anyone in the industry. Love to connect people. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your generosity in that. And yes, that is gold. So take advantage of the opportunity, folks in the audience. On that note, we're going to go ahead and have our closing reception. We're going to have a little networking happy hour. Of course, the panelists are more than welcome to stick around for that. And if not, thank you again, and we'll see you at the next one. And then for the folks attending, we're going to just start going ahead and bringing you guys up on stage. If you want to continue to join us, you're going to shortly start appearing on the screen here. So, thanks all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Winston Baker. Thank you.
Probably a faster way to do this.
So Catherine, I'm just going to start letting everyone in.
Yeah, I'm trying to do the same here. I'm letting folks in, and don't be shy. Feel free to appear on screen if you're inclined to appear, so we can see you all and we can have a little chat. I don't know if anybody has a rosé in hand, and if so, we welcome that. I've got I've got a beet juice. It looks like red wine, but you know, I figured might as well.
Okay.
你帮我们介绍一下后面
Oh, I
单
see
独
Sue Ellen. Nice. Okay. I think there's a
Sorry,
lot of people muted though.
Taking a bit of time. This is the first time we're doing this, but we thought it'd be fun. It's at the end of day for Can.
And it's the end of our CAN programming this year, which is, yes, it's a lot.
Let's see. Getting a lot of folks here.
I think I
Hello.
and everyone. Oh yes, we have Catherine with a glass there. Cheers.
Yay, cheers.
Oh, and Amber. Yes, I have a bottle of water.
So boring. What's the fun in that? That is not happy hour.
Okay, so I think everyone that's left here. Catherine, did you? I may have missed it because
I might have missed one more person. Let me just make sure. And obviously, although everybody is muted at the moment, when we call your name, you'll be encouraged to speak. So feel free to mute yourself.
Great.
All right. So this is how this is going to go. We basically are all going to have about 30 seconds to introduce ourselves. Hold on. I think I'm missing a few more people. Sorry, guys.
I'll keep checking it. Don't worry. You can keep going. I'll keep checking.
So yeah, I think there's 11 more attendees that we need to bring up and promote to panelists. Do you see that?
Yes, but I've been doing that and it just, it says talking permitted. Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, if you scroll up, there's a few more names.
Okay.
So if you can
I'm doing it. I got it.
Okay, great. So yeah, so since we have a little bit of time left, we're gonna do 30-second rounds here. Everybody's gonna get a chance to introduce themselves. This way we all get to know each other, and we're gonna have we're all gonna share our gives and gets. And basically what that means is, you know, so mention your name, of course, where you're from, and then mention, you know, something that you think you can offer to our attendees at some point in time, and also as far as what you need for yourself. So, you know, I'll take me for an example. My name is Catherine Winston, co-founder Winston Baker. My give is that I offer events for the entertainment industry. And I also can offer speaking opportunities. And if you're ever interested in that, you can always just email me. And what I'll do is I'll add my email to the comments line. As far as gets, we could always use more audience. We could always use more attendees watching our webinars and supporting our events. And so we appreciate any kind of, you know, spreading the word about Winston Baker, winstonbaker.com. So that's me, and that's my give and my get. And what I'm going to do is just, I'm going to go down the list here, whoever is appearing on my screen next. It looks like it's probably in a alphabetical order, and I'll call out your name, and you're going to give us your name and give and get. Got it?
Yes.
All right. Well, Amy, you're actually, Gina is next on my screen. We already know Gina Kim, but Gina, did you want to say anything about your gives and gets?
No, I think I said enough.
All right.
Yeah. And then I don't know. It's I just wish that kind of could have gone on a little while longer, because there were so many interesting discussion in depth happening, and I felt like it got truncated because of time. So if we could just kind of carry on a little bit, that'd be great. And
I think everyone would have liked to listen to you.
about the visceral nature of VR, and I have something to say about it too. And we were just kind of like having such great time.
I know there's so much more to share. Well, and hopefully we'll have a follow-up to this discussion at some point in time. So we'll go with Catherine Brunner next.
Hello, I'm Catherine. So you're joining me in Berlin with my rosé. And we're Winston Productions. We're producing an experience called Me and My Brain, which brings you inside your brain, and it also reacts to your brain because it's neuroreactive.
Oh, wow.
and we'd love to bring it to the world. So whoever is interested in it, will be ready with it in the fall, premiering in Munich. And afterwards, we're looking for everyone who wants to join us in bringing Me and My Brain to the world.
Wonderful. Up next, and I hope I say this name correctly, Shelag Farrell. How do you say your name? Oh, let's unmute you here.
So I need to unmute myself. Hi.
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 I'm Sheila. It's actually pronounced Sheila.
Sheila. Sorry about that.
I'm really new to VR and AR. I'm a producer in the traditional sense. I came to your sessions really to learn more about VR and AR and how it's moving. I'm a producer, but I'm really interested in the craft of storytelling for the new medium, which looks exciting because I come from a background in theatre, and AR and theatre seems to be more closely connected, I think. So that's what interests me. What can I offer you? My knowledge is so low, but I live in the UK. So if anybody's ever, you know, when COVID ends, if you ever find your way to the UK, you've got a friend here. That's what I can offer you. Touch base, and I can tell you all about the UK.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Sheila. And then we've got, let's see here, George Russell. Oh, hold on. Oh, there
Can
you
you
are.
hear me? Okay. Aloha. Hi.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Yeah.
Are you in Hawaii actually? Or is
yes.
that
My background is a virtual background though, but it's still 7:30 in the morning here, so it's not that quite sunny yet. And it's too early to have a Mai Tai. But no, thank you so much for all of your very informative seminars. I've attended a couple when you came here to the Hawaii International Film Festival several years back. But the technology is moving so quickly. I bought IM360 camera some 5 years ago with 5 cameras on a stick. And I tried to promote that to hotel properties, resorts, museums, and sports events. And the only thing that stuck was sports events here in Hawaii. But now with the cameras getting smaller, I was very interested in attending and hearing from the likes of Gina and other filmmakers to tell indigenous stories of the culture here. And I was very interested in AR because we might have a chance to do augmented reality performances using local theater groups to showcase iconic historic figures that have passed away in the actual settings that the events took place. So I don't want to limit the AR for audiences that have to visit the actual site here in Hawaii. That would be nice, but I want to take that iconic historic experience to the world. So I'm trying to figure out which is better, VR or AR, to achieve that, or can I do both? So that's kind of what I want to hear. Thank you.
Great. Interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. Some of you folks on screen now don't have your names on your images. So if you can just make sure you label your names, and this way I can call you out. I see Donna LaFont. Donna, let me, you're unmuted.
Hi.
Hi, Donna.
Hey, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. I am founder of Font Film Society and also Big Screen Films. Was in theatrical exhibition with my ex-husband, who started the first art independent theater in 1976. So I'm looking to continue the legacy through virtual pop-up cinema, which I've created on a new website called foodfilmmusic.com, which is of service to any of you, including Winston Baker, if you would like for me to help market your films, events. It's definitely part of the content I'm trying to create across the board, whether it's regionally, locally, or internationally, so it fits in. And then in addition to, I've been working on a movie script about the missing World Cup, Jules Rimet. We definitely, we have our screenwriter, our director, and obviously not knowing how UK productions are going to move forward, I think the AR and VR options might be the direction we need to go. So any leads you all might have for companies I should be reaching out to, just to one, self-educate for myself, and also to keep storytelling alive and well as we move forward in this brave new virtual world. So yeah, check out foodfilmmusic.com, and you can email me any kind of leads you have on events and how I can help you guys market what you're working on.
Wonderful.
And I really like what you've been doing. And yeah, we're all missing Can right about now, so this is perfect.
That's why I figure we all get on screen at least.
Yeah.
Let's see, we've got Inga Morin. Oh, let me unmute you. There. Oh, wait, hold on. Oh, where did you go?
Hi. Hello, everybody. I'm currently in my car waiting to get tested for COVID-19.
Oh, wow.
It's been long in Florida for I've been here since 8:30. But I'm happy that I was able to watch this. The event has been so very exciting because I've been hearing a lot of talk, at least on LinkedIn, about a lot of VR companies going down. More because they're being focused in not specific entertainment, they were mostly focused on other types of industry, and a lot of people kind of losing hope. But from this panel, I just felt that it's not a losing technology. It's actually just emerging, and I felt like people are just have to understand it and adopt it. So that's my give. I'm really excited that the conversation is still continuing. And I guess that's my get or my give. I'm not sure now. But what I can offer, I'm a post-production filmmaker, post-production professional for the past 10, 15 years working in, all kinds of mediums. And I'm now actually doing the switch to immersive technology because I'm really excited. So I'm actually, currently looking into see how I can do that. And yes, looking into companies where I can use my filmmaking background to kind of push forward in this technology, new world.
Well, good luck with that, and good luck with your test as well. Hopefully it's negative.
Yeah, I know. No, it's just we're just getting it in Florida because I'm not sick, but we're just getting it. Whew. Yeah.
All right. Up next, I see Fahar Fazian's name. I'm going to unmute you. We don't see you on the screen, but hopefully we'll be able to hear you. Let's see. Ask to unmute. Or maybe not. Let's see. I'm just going down the line here. There's a lot of folks without images. I will, if I unmute you. Courtney York.
This year. So not right here.
Maybe Courtney's on a call.
Yeah, sounds like it. All right, let's see. We've got
there. I think Sue Ellen is ahead of some of those. Maybe my view is different than yours, Catherine.
Yeah, we have different screen setups here. Belen Lemaitre. Trying to unmute. No. Francienne Abasian. Francienne, are you there? This is a very fun experiment, guys.
Muted, Catherine.
Huh?
It's muted. Oh, there. Francienne's unmuted.
Hello, hello. Are you there? No. What about Gregoire? Gregoire? I don't hear from Gregoire. Oh, wait. Oh, it's not allowing me to unmute. Let's see here. Lisa Reisinger? No. We'll try a couple more, and if nobody else is responding, hello, hello, then we'll get to know everybody else who's on the screen a little bit more.
And there's some people we haven't called out that I do see them.
Yes. So we have, I think, 3 more folks on the screen who we don't have the names of. So I'll start from who I see at the top here. We've got a gentleman with headphones on.
His name is Stanislaw. He did put his name, Stanislaw.
Oh, for some reason I don't see it. Okay, go ahead.
Hi.
There you go.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi. I'm Stan, and I represent Imagine Film Festival from Amsterdam, the Netherlands. And I'm a head VR curator and a founder of the VR section of the festival. And we deal with fantastic genres. So anything from like science fiction, horror, fantasy, anything with fantastic elements, really. And I'm always looking for new content. So if you are working on something, just hit us up, and we are always happy to feature fantastic experiences from all around the world. And I'm also a program advisor now for 5 Flavors Asian Film Festival in Poland, which is now starting its own VR section. So I'm going to be looking for content for that festival as well. So that's give and get, I guess, goes. it goes both ways.
And then I see the names are popping up now. Suzanne Guggen, I can't see your full name there, but Suzanne G. Hold on here.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi, I am a documentary film producer and I'm working on my first VR piece with a company based in Zurich, Switzerland. Currently, I'm in LA due to COVID, so I can't leave the country right now. So we are in our experimenting phase. Actually, it took us 3 years to come to the stage that we finally can try out things. We took a lot of time for the storytelling process. We have a story now. It's a story on the verge of art and science and philosophy. It's the story of a philosopher and his wife, also crossing documentary genre and fiction. His name is Siegfried Krakauer, a German philosopher. And there is no film material about him and no audio either. And we are creating now a historic avatar. He will learn to speak with us and he can speak to us. So it's a bit of crossover what you said earlier about working on historical content and make it alive again, or that we can have an immersive experience with someone we just see flat or have only images. It's quite fascinating, but very challenging, I think, also in terms of techniques. There is so much to learn all the time and it's changing so fast.
Yes.
Quite something. So we are now in the phase of fundraising and still, also the technical part to find the right partners for it. So, and
Dan's got a lot of gets.
Yes.
Yeah, but the good thing in Switzerland is there is a funding system for VR. So it's not a desert. Still we need a little more, but it's very helpful. So what I can offer is for the festival people a good piece soon, hopefully. And whoever is interested, I'm also interested in participating in other works. So in terms of co-production or crossing over, whatever, it's a matter of exchange and finding the right work together. And I think there are possibilities what I could bring in from Switzerland. Also in terms of talent in the meantime, like quite some good people.
That's great. Thank you,
Great.
Suzanne.
I was going to say that we have a very fond place we have a special part in our hearts. We're very fond of Zurich because we produced with the Zurich Film Festival our own programming.
I know Winston is quite active there, Winston Baker, yeah.
It was wonderful. What a great experience.
Tossin Coker, am I saying your name correctly? Let me just, there you go.
Hi, yes, I'm Tosin Coker. Yes, Tosin. Yes, I'm a director, producer. I've done a few films and have some on Netflix. I actually posed a question to Gina earlier because I'm currently we've been developing for 2 years, a horror movie that addresses the racial oppression and systemic racism stemming from the violent killings of protesters and police brutality against Black people. So it's a horror movie, and we were trying to capture the film in a one-point perspective, cameras, Google Cam, all those things. And then we now thought about the idea of making it virtual reality, so more immersive and visceral in that nature, so you're actually within the whole situation. But the logistics of approaching it from a VR standpoint is something that I do not know anything about. So it's like trying to get the logistics and understanding of it. I think this panel was a perfect panel actually to address those things, and just being able to get those contact information, at least the conversation can start as the project is being packaged, which is funny, it's at CAA right now. So so it's nice to meet you, and I'm grateful for this opportunity, and I'm hoping we can collaborate more, and maybe I can meet up with people that can, teach me more about this new media that we are going to be, gravitating towards.
And it sounds like you'll be reaching out to Gina directly, right?
Probably, most probably, yes. So you're in LA, right, Gina?
Yeah, I am in LA. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So yeah, I'll be reaching out to you.
Sounds amazing. Your products sound amazing, and then also I love the fact that some of you guys have like theater background, and as Sheila pointed out, to me at least, VR is more like closer to experimental theater. Like all the audience are like hunkered down in the middle, and then there are actors around you, and we can't really control them. They just kind of pop out here and there, and that was my approach. And I also did theater. I have theater background, so it was easier for me to adapt. But I think like hardcore 2D cinema filmmakers had hard time making the transition. But your project sounds incredible. You should do it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll be reaching out to you definitely to learn as much as I can.
Mm-hmm. Good luck with that, Tosin.
Yes, and give us a shout out when you guys work together and collaborate.
Definitely.
Met on Winston Baker. Lastly, I know we've already heard from Nonny during the panel discussion, but we'd like some closing words of encouragement and inspiration from the godmother of virtual reality, please.
Yes.
Oh, the closing words really are, I hate actually saying this to people because there are days when I think it's just, we shouldn't have to say this, but don't take no for an answer. I think that I got told no, been told no more times than I could even begin to describe. And if you have a vision and you have a dream, it may take longer than you'd like. I can't believe that we have WebXR. I can't believe we have standalone goggles. I can't believe that we're the tools that I can start to offer for people just to drag and drop volumetric content. So the day's been emerging for me now, finally, of something that I've been fighting for 13 years. So that's my last really words, is to say, and so that's my hope, that reach becomes, that love becomes useful for people. And then I get to see amazing stories from very diverse makers. I think this is a really important time. It's just starting out this medium, and we need to have diversity now. We need, from the ground floor going up, we need diversity in the makers of this content, so that we're not in this exclusive technology world that we've seen in Silicon Valley. That's my give, I hope. And then my get is just that, believe it or not, I'm trying to remake the Carl Theater Dryer 1928 Joan of Arc, Passion of Joan of Arc.
Wow.
And Alejandro Gonzalez, too, has agreed to sign on as an exec producer. Now I need to raise the money to make it. So there's my...
What's your budget? Can you say what your budget is?
I'm hoping to raise $2 million for this. I want to do full volumetric horses, and I have a pretty serious plan for it. But the cool thing is, we can do photogrammetry of all the real locations in France, and therefore we can put people on the real scene where she was. So I think really interesting combination of both things, but also look at what is the close-up, right? That film really established a close-up in film. Like, people look to that and say, wow, right? The way it filmed the screen, that was a close-up. But now, as I said before, you got to scratch that out of your script. But what does it mean to have an embodied close-up? What does it mean to be so close to the scene in an embodied way that we have that same full feeling that we had when we saw the screen of this face? So there's my end leave. Okay, thank you guys so much for having me. I just love meeting a diverse community like this one that was here today. So congratulations to Catherine Winston and Associates and for pulling that off, that attracting this kind of an audience. I really, really commend you for doing that.
Well, it's been an honor to have you join us, honestly. And thank you to everybody here who participated on the program. If there's any contact info you missed during that time, you will get this recording shortly after this event, so you'll be able to replay or whatnot. And you always know how to get a hold of Amy and myself. We're just at info@winstonbaker.com. We hope everybody stays safe, keep creating, and that's it. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.